Starting live video. Oh, wow. Changed the format a little bit tonight. Hi, good evening, everybody. So tonight's Doc Talk is a little bit early because I'm still a little bit under the weather. I had some abdominal surgery last week, and so I thought tonight's talk would be a great time to talk about some tips, lessons learned, things you can do to prepare before and after surgery. So I hope that none of you actually have to undergo anything like that. However, if you do, I hope that tonight's talk will give you a few ideas and things you can do to prepare yourself and prepare your family members for what may happen. So the first thing to know is that any surgery can be a little bit unpredictable. So for example, in my case, I was supposed to be under for a very quick 30-minute procedure, and it didn't quite work out as expected, and about 3.5 hours later, was brought up and told that they had to expand the procedure a little bit, and so it was quite a different experience coming out than going in. And then 2 days later, in order to try to fix the issue that they were trying to fix during the original surgery, went under anesthesia again, so another quick, so they said 60-minute procedure turned into a little over 3.5 hours again. And so both times it was a very different experience, and that's also one of the things that I wanted to share with you, is that anytime that you go into a surgery, it is a total gifting of trust. It's very similar to when you get on an airplane and you're handing over the reins to the pilot. You just have to trust that the process will work, and there's no guarantees of success in either case. But most of the time, fortunately, most of the time things go well for people. So a few things to know before you go into surgery is that because things might not turn out exactly as expected, the discussion that you have with the doctor may not fully cover the scope of what is done. And in the metaphor of using them as an airline pilot, you have to trust that the pilot who is driving the ship knows the corrections and the things that need to be done, because only they are in the moment and they're in charge of what's going on. So for example, if some bleeding happens or something else happens, they may have to shift things around a little bit in order to accomplish what needs to happen, which hopefully is a successful surgery and people coming out alive and well to tell about it. Hi, Deepti. Alrighty, so first of all, going into surgery, they are going to give you a lovely list of instructions. This is what I got, for example, a nice long couple of pages, and it does tell you things like don't use diet pills, for example, because certain diet pills and fitness supplements, when mixed with anesthesia medication, can cause death. So for another reason I don't usually recommend diet pills, but if you have to go under anesthesia for some reason, then they can cause a problem. They do recommend the night before, the morning of the surgery, to take a shower or bath ahead of time, because trust me, you will not be doing that immediately after. And do not use the following items after that shower. Don't use perfume and lotions and deodorant and makeup and hair pieces and jewelry and all sorts of things. So fingernails must be kept completely clear and clean. These are vitally important because as they are, as the people are going into surgery, these nail beds are how the anesthesiologist is able to monitor your oxygen levels. And so, of course, if you got blue on there, doesn't go very well. In cases of emergency room surgeries, you actually have to use nail polish remover to clean off the fingernails for the people when they go under. All right, leave jewelry and valuables at home. I hate to say it, but in my previous hospitals where I've worked, we occasionally would have reports of thievery or theft that happened around the OR or around the hospital in general. And part of that is if somebody's admitted, it's a very open system, people come and go, and you really don't want to have anything valuable with you. So those things are good to give to your companions, which you will have companions with you because you cannot drive after a same-day surgery. Once you wake up from that anesthesia, the body feels pretty rocky, so to say, and driving is not safe and usually not recommended for a few weeks afterwards. Loose-fitting clothing. So basically, very loose-fitting clothing is very helpful because basically when abdominal surgery is done, the belly will be expanded with air, and you're going to have incisions on there. And so anything that will put pressure on those will be uncomfortable. Also, so basically shorts, pants, if you're a woman, a loose sundress, anything that is very just kind of loose and flowing like a muumuu or something. Anyway, anything that's very, very easy to put on. Maybe a couple sizes too large. If you're doing shoulder and arm surgery, button-down shirts like I'm demonstrating here. And basically you want to think ahead of if something is going over a cast, a splint, or a bulky dressing, and will not put pressure on the surgical site. In my case, it was not anticipated that I would have to stay the night. Came close to doing it, but ended up being able to go home. So it might be good to have a extra little baggie of basically a travel bag, which has very, very basic essential toiletries: a toothbrush, toothpaste, bathrobe, slippers, and nightgowny kind of stuff. Generally speaking, if you have to spend the night, they will provide you a Johnny of some sort to wear, but sometimes you feel a little more human if you have a shirt or something available to you, like a bathrobe. The essential toiletries, just in case you have to spend the night, are good to bring. And eyeglasses, they don't like to have contacts and dentures because when you're under anesthesia, sometimes they'll actually tape the eyelids closed, and that would, if there was a contact there, that would actually pretty much rub on the cornea of the eye, maybe cause a scratch. And so dentures, contacts, things like that need to be removed before surgery, and bring your favorite pair of eyeglasses. And bring crutches and a walker the morning of surgery if applicable. Now that's something that I did not anticipate. When I went home after the first surgery, I was able to walk with assistance, leaning on a friend's shoulder and such. The second time I went through the anesthesia, they used a different mixture of drugs, and it was a little bit more of a roller coaster ride, kind of a lot of vertigo and unsteadiness, and I felt really unsafe maneuvering with just my family members to lean on overnight for various reasons. So I phoned a friend while I was in the hospital, and basically they went over to, was it Walgreens or CVS, one of the local pharmacies in the neighborhood, and picked up one of those walkers that has a little folding seat, and that was a godsend. Delivered it to the house, and because I knew that they was waiting for me at the house, I felt very safe being able to go home, because I was able to know that, all right, even though I feel like the world is spinning, I can hold on to this, and if I need to sit down, you just turn around and boom, there's a little seat on these things. So anticipate the unexpected, I guess, is the bottom line for this. And so there's a lot of other kinds of things. They'll tell you exactly what kind of food to have. Most surgeries, they don't want anything in the stomach at all for at least 8 hours prior to the surgery. My friend is eating my props. Sorry. Don't go too far with that. I'll bring you more. So basically, things that you can do the night before, you definitely want to have good meals. Highly, highly recommend the day before. If you're not normally very regular with the bowel movements, doing something more than your usual to get a good bowel movement going prior to the surgery is very helpful. Not for anything in particular with the surgery itself as a procedure. However, with the narcotics and with all the anesthetic medications, pooping can be very difficult after the surgery, and so you want to think about that ahead early and often, as it were. And they're also going to do discharge medications. In my case, I was thinking about everything except for the discharge medications, and was able to give my parents who came down to spend the week with me my ID, and they were able to go in and get the medications activated. So they had the bag of goodies waiting for me when I finished. So yay to support system is very helpful. And that way after the surgery, the medications were with us and ready to go. Of course, I always recommend no tobacco anyway, but no tobacco products after midnight before the surgery, and various sorts there. So they do have, in this section, they did have a little bit more about different comfort measures and things. And I got to say that is a pretty good little worksheet, basically talking about the basics for people that aren't familiar with it to be able to kind of go over it. Also, a note about shaving. People sometimes think that an area needs to be shaved before they go into surgery if the surgery is going to involve that area. And believe it or not, the infection rate actually is much higher if somebody shaves ahead of time, because when a razor blade goes over the area, it disrupts the skin, and it kind of irritates the lining of the skin in that area. And so if a area needs to be prepped or shaved, the surgical team will use clippers, or they'll do, depending on what they need to do, they might do some shaving themselves, but they will prep the area for you. So it's not recommended to shave the area involved before the surgery. They will, the betadine and the chlorhexidine washes and the other things that are used to, and basically give an antiseptic area to the area, will definitely completely cleanse any stray hairs that may be in the area. So no need for you as a patient to worry about that. Nausea and vomiting. So post-operative nausea and vomiting is the most common complication following general anesthesia, and I will attest to that. And comfort measures. So since the last time I was in the OR as a physician, I'll tell you it's a lot easier being on that side of the table than the other. They've advanced the technology of the things that they're using to keep people comfortable. So I was happy to find there was this little tube-like thing in the bed, and there was a little heater knob next to it, and my parents found that when they turned the knob, it blew warm air into the blanket, which is very sweet because the preoperative areas are still kept cold. That's one thing that hasn't changed since I was doing surgeries as a resident. Also, the bear huggers and the other gowns are nice. They've also got a special kind of a sock that they put on before you go into surgery, which has grip pads on it, so in case you end up needing to walk around, it is warm for the feet and you also don't slip as well. Alrighty, so yeah, and they do have things to help with thirst and stuff, because obviously if you're NPO, as we call it, nothing by mouth, from surgery the night before, as you can imagine, it can be pretty dry when you're going back awake or when you're going under. So, and when I mean nothing by mouth before, they are even so specific as to tell you not to brush your teeth the morning of the surgery, but just to rinse the mouth with water and spit it all out entirely. Because if you admit to anything going into the system, they will hold your surgery for another 8 hours. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that, but that's they do take it very serious. And part of the reason for that is because when a person is under anesthesia, they basically have the potential to throw up even during the surgery. And so they really want to minimize the possibility of anything coming up and out, or things coming up and then going back down the wrong tube and into the lungs and irritating the lungs as well. Alrighty, so I think that covers a lot of what I was meaning to talk about before surgery. Oh, one other thing too, there have been some studies that showed that when people are relaxed and have a positive mental attitude, and sometimes in the case of children are distracted, I think the study was with video games or something, prior to the surgery, they actually had faster recovery times and better outcomes as well. And I think that with the study with the kids, they're pointing out that before going to surgery, sometimes the parents of the children would be very anxious and holding on to the kid, and the kid would kind of soak up that anxiety energy or the emotions, so to say. We're very social creatures, and so we tend to mirror the emotions of the people around. And when the kids were instead completely distracted with something that they really loved, some video game, something that really drew them in, basically they didn't have all this worry coming at them during it as well. So I think in the spirit of trying to keep some of these talks a little bit closer or shorter, I'm going to go ahead and hit the finish button for a few minutes and take a quick break, and then I'll go on to some tips after surgery. So tune in again in just a few minutes. All right, see you guys soon.